With less than 2 months to go before the presidential election, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are hitting the campaign trail hard. And both candidates are focusing on this group in particular, Gen Z. Another common term for them is Zoomers. Although they're the youngest, least experienced voters, the results of the last presidential election show that they may hold the most power.
Their voter turnout in the 2020 election was historic compared to about 3 decades of previous elections there. So this might not sound like a lot, but 50% of eligible voters among Generation Z, or the youth vote, we call it 18 to 29, among that cohort, among the youth vote, it was really, really high in 2020 compared to especially in 2016, when it was only about 39% of eligible young voters came out. So it was a huge surge. And a lot of people believe that that surge in younger voters really helped Joe Biden win that election.
That's Melissa Deckman, CEO of the Public Religion Research Institute and author of The Politics of Gen Z. In 2020, between the COVID-19 pandemic and the public outcry following the murder of George Floyd, countless young adults became active in politics. But even before then, many found themselves dissatisfied with inaction on key issues like climate change, immigration, and most importantly, gun control.
Certainly a pivotal event that is often seen as really influential when it comes to youth thinking is gun violence and the March for Our Lives movement. That was one really demonstrable, obvious example of young adults who have grown up in an age in which gun violence is a reality in their schools. Young adults who it's commonplace to do drills in the classroom for active shooters. So it's a phenomenon that has uniquely burdened young adults.
That's Elizabeth Matto, director of the Eagleton Institute of Politics at Rutgers University. She says that the March for Our Lives movement showed countless teens and young adults the power they have as a unified force. Even past gun control, Gen Zers have been getting pulled into politics for another reason. They're much more racially and ethnically diverse compared to past generations.
1 in 2 Zoomers, roughly, are non-white. They're also the queerest generation. So roughly 1 in 4 Zoomers identify as LGBTQ. And lastly, they're a lot less religious, and they're more religiously pluralistic. And so you tend to have a diversity of religious viewpoints among Gen Z. All of these factors really reinforce a sense among most Gen Zers that having a democracy that looks like the rest of America, that looks like them, is really important.
And as opposed to older generations, Gen Z's political activism is predominantly led by women.
With Generation Z, we've seen a reverse gender gap in political participation. And what I mean by that is that well into the 20th century, when it came to most forms of political engagement, men were far more likely to participate than women. Now, women overall close that gap around the aughts of this new century, but we've never really seen a situation where women have been more engaged in politics than young men. And this is what we're really finding with Gen Z.
And this heavy engagement with politics is happening on platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and X.
This is where they get their news and information, for better or for worse. But in terms of political organizing, compared to older women, Gen Z women's use of social media really catapulted lots of engagement. So they're learning about politics online, they're finding people who think like they do, and they're using that as a way to galvanize and organize politically.
Use this summer as an example. After Harris became the Democratic nominee, videos supporting her were suddenly all over TikTok. Between edits set to music from Charlie XCX's album Brat or memes referencing her viral comments about coconut trees, it's clear that Gen Z Democrats are much more excited about her candidacy than Biden's. But while these posts and memes are all in good fun, do they actually have the power to sway an election?
The impact of that is, I think, still in conversation. I think it's something really to really be thinking about. I think it would be short-sighted to think all it takes are some cute memes and some funny responses on social media. But if nothing else, it might intrigue young adults, be a window or an avenue to bring young adults into a campaign when maybe they weren't paying that much attention prior, but now maybe they'll pay a little bit more attention.
And while Gen Z tends to lean more Democratic, that doesn't mean everyone's supporting Harris. In fact, the Trump campaign is also using social media to drum up support from young adults.
I think the Trump campaign is certainly turning to social media and masculine themes as a way to try to reach out to some young men voters. Younger men are more conservative compared with younger women. And in early polling, again, when Biden was the presumptive nominee, it appeared as though Trump was making some inroads to young men voters. And so what the Trump campaign has been doing, I think pretty smartly, is trying to reach some young men voters, especially those that aren't as interested in politics, in places where they're hanging out online. So Trump's been doing interviews with people like Logan Paul. So for example, Trump's been making appearances at UFC fighting championships. This is the ultimate fighting, this mixed martial arts sort of setting that really gravitates toward young men. And of course, I think that the Trump campaign is really doubling down on more masculine themes in the hopes that this will appeal to some young men voters.
Clearly, both campaigns are making progress with Gen Z, so who's going to come out on top? According to Deckman and Maddow, it might depend on how well they address one key issue.
One of the things that we found in our research at PRI is that the single most important issue among Gen Z, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, women or men, is really the economy. And so it's going to be incumbent, I think, on both campaigns to spell out how their visions for the economy will really help Gen Z in their daily lives.
This November, 41 million members of Gen Z will be eligible to vote. That's nearly double the amount from 2020, and if voter turnout reaches 50% again, that'll be over 20 million votes cast from Zoomers alone. The candidate that's able to best connect with this powerful group may just very well be our next president. To find out more about Melissa Deckman, Elizabeth Maddow, and all our featured guests, visit viewpointsradio.org. You can find Deckman's book, The Politics of Gen Z, on Amazon.com or request copies to be stocked at your local bookstore. This segment was written and produced by Grace Galante. Our executive producer is Amira Zaveri. Studio production by Jason Dickey. I'm Gary Price. This segment is brought to you by the Capital One Venture X card. Earn unlimited 2X miles on everything you buy, plus get access to over 1,300 airport lounges and a $300 annual credit for bookings through Capital One Travel. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.